The Great Hall on Nexus Prime was bigger than most space stations. 47 different alien species had sent their best diplomats to this emergency meeting. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime as creatures that looked nothing like each other tried to communicate. Ambassador Lisa Carter sat at the human table near the center of the massive room. She was a woman of average height with brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her dark blue diplomatic uniform was simple and clean. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was dangerous, yet every alien in the room kept glancing her way. The Valkyrie delegation sat directly across from the humans. They were tall beings with crystal-like skin that reflected light in strange patterns. Their leader, High Chancellor Zexthu, had 4 arms and moved them in sharp, aggressive gestures. As he spoke, his voice came through the translation system as cold and precise. "The humans have violated every principle of peaceful expansion," Zexthu announced to the gathering. "They spread across star systems like a disease. They take resources that belong to others. They make trade deals that somehow always benefit them more than their partners." Behind him, holographic displays showed human colonies scattered across hundreds of worlds. Red dots marked each human settlement, and there were many red dots. Too many, according to the Valkyrie. Lisa watched the display calmly. She had seen these accusations before. Every few years, some species would get nervous about human expansion and demand a council meeting. It was always the same complaints. Humans moved too fast. Humans were too successful. Humans were too different. Aquatic Hydro's delegation floated in their water-filled observation pods. Their leader, Consul Myrthula, made rippling motions with her fins that indicated concern. "The human growth rate is unprecedented," she said through her translator. "In 50 years, they have established more colonies than most species manage in 500 years. The insectoid Chitauri clicked their mandibles together in what passed for worried conversation. Their hive mind made them think alike, and right now they were all thinking the same thing. Humans were unpredictable. Near the back of the chamber, the ethereal collective floated in their energy forms. They rarely took sides in galactic politics, but even they seemed disturbed by the topic. Their spokesperson, a shimmering being of pure light, spoke in musical tones that the translators turned into words. "The humans demonstrate patterns of behavior that do not match known evolutionary models," the ethereal said. "This creates uncertainty in galactic stability projections." Admiral Jake Morrison sat beside Lisa at the human table. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands that spoke of a long military career. Unlike Lisa, he looked like he might be dangerous. But he sat quietly, letting the diplomats talk. That was how humans worked. The right person for the right job. Captain Ben Parker, the intelligence officer, made notes on a small device. He was younger than the others, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Director Kate Sullivan, the cultural expert, sat at the end of the table reading from a tablet. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but something about her made other species uncomfortable. Zexthu activated another holographic display. This one showed trade routes and resource flows. "Look at this evidence," he said, his 4 arms pointing at different parts of the display. "Human trade agreements with the Proxima sector. Human mining rights in the Centauri system. Human agricultural colonies in the Outer Rim. Each deal appears fair on the surface," he continued. "But the humans always gain more than they give. They negotiate with species that lack their experience in galactic commerce. They take advantage of cultures that do not understand human methods." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Draconian Empire, known for their proud warrior culture, nodded their massive reptilian heads. The silicon-based miners, Federation, who rarely spoke in council meetings, actually voiced their support for the Valkyrie position. "The humans are not like us," declared General Throck of the Draconian Empire. "They do not follow the natural order. Strong species should dominate weak species. This is how the galaxy has always worked. But humans make weak species stronger. Instead of conquering them, this disrupts the balance. Lisa finally stood up. The moment she rose from her chair, the entire chamber fell silent. It was not because she had called for attention or made any dramatic gesture. It was simply that when a human stood up in a room full of aliens, every survival instinct in the galaxy started sending warning signals. "Honored colleagues," Lisa said in a calm, clear voice. She did not need the translation system to be heard. Human voices carried well in most atmospheres. "I have listened to your concerns with great interest." She walked slowly toward the center of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden quiet. 46 different species watched her movement with the kind of attention usually reserved for dangerous predators. "You speak of our expansion as if it were a plague," Lisa continued. "You describe our trade agreements as if they were theft. You characterize our success as if it were a crime against galactic order." She stopped at the central speaking platform and turned to face the Valkyrie delegation. "High Chancellor Zex Thu, you have presented compelling evidence that humans are different from other species. On this point, we are in complete agreement." The statement sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. Admitting to being different was not usually a diplomatic strategy. "But perhaps," Lisa said, activating her own holographic display, "it is time we discussed what those differences actually mean." The display that appeared was not what anyone expected. Instead of military strength or territorial claims, it showed simple charts and graphs, population statistics, resource consumption rates, economic growth patterns, the kind of boring data that usually put diplomats to sleep. "You claim that humans expand aggressively," Lisa said, highlighting a particular section of data. "Yet our expansion rate is actually 23% slower than the galactic average over the past century." The number hung in the air like a challenge. Several species representatives pulled out their own data devices to check the figures. "The difference," Lisa continued, "is not in how fast we expand, but in how efficiently we use what we have." She clicked to the next display. "A world that might support 10 million Valkyrie can support 50 million humans. Not because we are smaller or require less resources, but because we have learned to work with planetary ecosystems instead of simply occupying them." Chancellor Zexthel's crystalline features darkened. "You speak of efficiency as if it were a virtue, but efficiency in expansion is exactly what we fear. You accomplish in decades what takes other species centuries. And this troubles you why, exactly?" Lisa asked. The question was simple, but it cut to the heart of the matter. In the silence that followed, the real issue became clear. It was not that humans were doing anything wrong. It was that they were doing everything right, and that made other species nervous. "Because," Zexthel said finally, "we do not understand how you do it. And we do not understand why you choose to do it the way you do." Lisa smiled. It was not a threatening expression, but something about it made every alien in the room feel like they were missing something important. "Now we come to the real question," she said. "You are not afraid of what humans might do. You are afraid of what humans choose not to do." The chamber remained silent as Lisa returned to her seat. Admiral Morrison and the rest of the human delegation sat quietly, waiting. They had been through situations like this before. They knew that the best way to handle fear was to address it directly. "Perhaps," Lisa said as she settled back into her chair, "it is time we had an honest conversation about what makes humans different, and why that difference might actually be the best thing that has ever happened to this galaxy." The emergency session had been called to discuss human expansion. But as the representatives of 46 species sat in uncomfortable silence, they began to realize they were about to learn something about humans that they had never understood before, something that would change everything. Lisa Carter stood at the central platform and activated her personal display system. The hologram that appeared was not what the assembled aliens expected. There were no battle plans or weapon specifications. No star charts showing conquered territories. Instead, they saw simple graphs showing trade numbers, population growth, and resource management data. High Chancellor Zexthul accuses us of aggressive expansion, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly across the vast chamber. Let us examine this claim with actual facts rather than fear. She highlighted a section of the display that showed expansion rates over the past 100 years. The numbers were clear and easy to read. Every species representative could see them, and several were already checking the data on their own devices. Human expansion rate, 0.73% per year, Lisa announced. Galactic average expansion rate, 0.96% per year. We are expanding more slowly than most of you. A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. The Chitauri delegation clicked their mandibles together in rapid discussion. The aquatic hydros made bubbling sounds in their water tanks that their translators turned into expressions of confusion. Chancellor Zexthul raised one of his forearms. These numbers may be technically accurate, but they do not tell the complete story. Human colonies are more successful than others. You achieve more with less territory. Exactly, Lisa replied with a smile that made several species representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. We are efficient. Is efficiency now considered a crime in galactic law? She clicked to the next display. This one showed detailed breakdowns of how different species use their colony worlds. The comparison was striking. Where other species might strip mine a world for resources or simply establish basic settlements, humans created complex, integrated systems. A typical Velkari colony supports about 10 million beings, Lisa explained. They build cities, extract resources, and maintain their population at sustainable levels. This is the standard model used by most galactic species. A human colony of the same size supports 50 million people. Not because we pack ourselves into smaller spaces, but because we have learned to work with planetary ecosystems instead of simply living on top of them. Admiral Morrison stood up from the human table. He was a big man who looked like he had seen many battles, but he moved with careful, controlled motions. We terraform worlds, he said in his deep voice. But we do not just change them to suit our needs, we improve them. Human terraforming techniques increase the carrying capacity of worlds by an average of 400%. Lisa continued. We do not just take what nature gives us, we make it better. Captain Ben Parker activated his own datapad and transmitted information to the main display. New numbers appeared, showing the before and after statistics of human colony worlds. Planet Kepler 442b, Parker read from his notes. Pre-colonization. Barren world with thin atmosphere, no native life. Post-terraforming. Breathable atmosphere, functioning ecosystem. Supports 35 million humans plus thousands of species of introduced plants and animals. Planet Ross 128b, he continued. Pre-colonization. Ice world with underground oceans. Minimal surface habitability. Post-terraforming. Temperate climate, agricultural capability. Supports 22 million humans while maintaining original ecosystem in polar regions. The list went on. World after world that humans had not just colonized but actually improved. The aliens in the chamber listened with growing unease. This was not how colonization was supposed to work. Director Kate Sullivan stood up from her place at the human table. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had studied every species in the galaxy. The standard galactic model of colonization is extraction-based, she said. You find a world with resources, you take those resources, you move on when they are depleted. This has been the pattern for thousands of years. Humans use a development-based model. We find a world with potential. We increase that potential. We create sustainable systems that last for generations. Consul Mirthala of the Hydros delegation rippled her fins in a gesture that indicated deep thought. The human claim is that they make worlds better rather than simply using them? That is correct, Lisa replied, and we can prove it. The holographic display changed again. This time it showed the Proxima system, where humans had first encountered the Hydros 5 years earlier. The before and after comparison was dramatic. When we first met the Hydros, they controlled 3 water worlds in the Proxima system, Lisa explained. These worlds supported a total population of 40 million Hydros. Resource extraction was limited by their technology. They could only access about 30% of their planet's potential. We offered to share our terraforming and resource management techniques. The Hydros accepted. Today, those same 3 worlds support 135 million Hydros, plus 20 million humans. The numbers were impressive, but Chancellor Zexthal was not convinced. And what did humans gain from this arrangement? You do not help other species out of pure kindness. Lisa's smile widened slightly. We gained allies, trading partners, and friends. We gained access to Hydro's underwater mining techniques that we could never have developed on our own. We gained new perspectives on ocean world management that have helped us terraform 12 other worlds. Most importantly, Admiral Morrison added, we gained trust. The word hung in the air like a foreign concept. Trust was not something that featured heavily in galactic politics. Most species alliances were based on mutual benefit or mutual fear. The idea of actually trusting another species was almost unthinkable. Consul Mirthala activated her own speaking system. The human claims are accurate, she said, her translated voice carrying the tone of reluctant admission. Our partnership with humanity has brought prosperity to both species. They could have simply taken what they wanted from our worlds. Their technology was superior, their military was stronger. But they chose to negotiate instead. They chose to offer partnership instead of demanding tribute. They chose to help us become stronger instead of keeping us weak. And this disturbs you, why? Director Sullivan asked, addressing the entire chamber. In what universe is choosing cooperation over conquest considered a character flaw? The question created an uncomfortable silence. Several species representatives looked at each other with expressions that roughly translated to embarrassment across their various facial structures. General Throck of the Draconian Empire stood up to his full impressive height. He was a massive reptilian being with scarred scales and battle honors carved into his armor. Because it is not natural, he growled through his translator. Strong species dominate weak species. This is the way of the galaxy. This is how evolution works. The strong take what they need from the weak. The weak serve the strong or are eliminated. This system has maintained galactic stability for millennia. But humans break this system, he continued, his voice rising. You make weak species stronger. You share power instead of hoarding it. You create alliances based on mutual benefit instead of dominance hierarchies. You are disrupting the natural order, declared the representative of the Silicon-based Miners Federation. Your behavior creates unpredictable variables in galactic politics. Lisa looked around the chamber, taking in the concerned faces of dozens of different species. Fear was written in their alien features, but it was a strange kind of fear. They were not afraid of human weapons or human armies. They were afraid of human kindness. Let me make sure I understand the charges against humanity, she said slowly. We are accused of expanding too efficiently. We are accused of making trade deals that benefit both parties too much. We are accused of helping other species become more successful. In short, we are accused of being too good at cooperation. She walked back toward the human table, but stopped halfway. I have a question for this council. In your species' histories, what happened when the strong consistently chose to help the weak instead of exploiting them? The silence that followed was telling. No species in the chamber had such a history. No species had ever chosen cooperation over domination when they had the power to dominate. That, Lisa said quietly, is exactly the problem. You fear us because we represent something you have never seen before. We represent the possibility that there might be a better way to organize galactic civilization. And that terrifies you more than any weapon ever could. Admiral Morrison stood up again. The question before this council is not whether humans are different. We have established that we are. The question is whether being different is necessarily being wrong. We offer you partnership. We offer you growth. We offer you a future where strength is used to build up rather than tear down. The choice, as always, is yours. The chamber remained silent as the humans returned to their seats. 46 species sat in uncomfortable quiet, contemplating implications they had never considered before. Outside the Great Hall, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that a small group of beings was discussing whether kindness might be more dangerous than cruelty. The emergency session continued. But now, the real questions were beginning to emerge. The silence in the great chamber stretched on for several minutes. Representatives from 46 different species sat in their seats, trying to process what they had just heard. The humans had not denied being different. Instead, they had proven that their differences made them more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Chancellor Zexthu finally broke the quiet. His crystalline form flickered with agitated light patterns as he spoke. You speak of cooperation and mutual benefit, but you avoid the real issue. Humans possess capabilities that exceed most species in this galaxy. Yet you choose not to use them for conquest. This unpredictable behavior makes you a threat to galactic stability, he continued. How can we plan for the future when we cannot predict what humans will do with their power? Lisa Carter stood up again, her movement causing every alien in the room to pay attention. Chancellor Zexthul raises an excellent point, she said. Perhaps it is time we discussed what humans are actually capable of. She nodded to Captain Ben Parker, who activated a new series of displays. Unlike the previous charts showing trade statistics and terraforming data, these new images showed something that made several species representatives lean forward in their seats. Current human military capabilities, Parker announced in a calm, professional voice. 2,847 active warships, 156 battle stations, defensive installations in 89 star systems. The numbers appeared on the holographic display in clear, easy-to-read format. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. The Valkyrie Empire, considered the most militarily powerful species in the galaxy, maintained fewer than 1,200 warships total. Our shipbuilding capacity, Parker continued, allows us to triple this force within 18 months if necessary. Our industrial base can support a fleet of over 8,000 ships without straining our economy. General Throck of the Draconian Empire stood up so quickly that his chair scraped loudly against the floor. This is impossible, he declared. Our intelligence estimates put human military strength at less than half these numbers. Your intelligence is based on what we allow you to see, Admiral Morrison replied calmly. We have never made our full capabilities public. There was no need to. Director Kate Sullivan activated her own datapad and transmitted additional information to the main display. Human economic influence extends to 34 of the 47 species represented in this council, she said. We provide critical resources, technology, or services to 72% of known galactic civilization. The implications were staggering. The Hydros delegation began making rapid bubbling sounds in their water tanks. The Chitauri clicked their mandibles in what could only be described as panic. Even the normally calm ethereal collective seemed disturbed by the revelations. We control the manufacturing processes for 70% of all starship components used by non-human species. Sullivan continued. We supply the advanced computing systems that run most galactic communication networks. We provide the medical technology that has extended lifespans for dozens of species. You could shut down half the galaxy just by withholding your exports, whispered the representative from the Tau Ceti Federation. We could, Lisa agreed, but we choose not to. She walked slowly around the central platform, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It is not our weapons, though we have many. It is not our numbers, though we reproduce efficiently. It is not our technology, though we innovate constantly. What makes us dangerous is that we are the only species in this galaxy that actively chooses to limit our own power. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Several species representatives pulled out communication devices and began sending urgent messages to their home governments. The information they were receiving was changing everything they thought they knew about galactic politics. Captain Parker activated another display, this one showing strategic projections that made the draconian military attach visibly flinch. Theoretical combat scenarios, Parker announced. Human forces versus combined Velkari-Draconian alliance. 73% probability of human victory within 6 months. Human forces versus the entire Galactic Defense Coalition. 58% probability of human victory within 2 years. Human forces versus all other species combined. 41% probability of human victory within 5 years. The numbers were delivered in the same calm, matter-of-fact tone that humans seem to use for everything. There was no boasting, no threats, just simple mathematical projections based on current capabilities. These are not predictions, Parker clarified. These are simply analyses of what would happen if humans chose to use their full military potential for conquest. But we do not choose conquest, Lisa said, returning to the center of the chamber. We choose cooperation. We choose partnership. We choose to build up rather than tear down. And that choice terrifies you more than any weapon ever could. Consul Murthala of the Hydros delegation activated her speaking system. Why? She asked, her translated voice carrying genuine confusion. Why do humans choose restraint when they could choose dominance? Director Sullivan smiled with the same unsettling warmth that Lisa had displayed earlier. Because we learned something that apparently no other species has discovered. Sometimes the strongest choice is the choice not to use your strength. She activated a new display that showed human historical data. In our species development, we discovered that societies based on cooperation lasted longer than societies based on domination. Groups that included outsiders became stronger than groups that excluded them. We learned that power without restraint eventually destroys itself. Every empire built on conquest eventually falls. Every species that rules through fear eventually faces rebellion. So we chose a different path, Admiral Morrison added. We chose to build alliances instead of empires. We chose to create partners instead of subjects. We chose to share power instead of hoarding it. The chamber was completely silent now. Even the translation system seemed to be working more quietly, as if afraid to disturb the gravity of the moment. You still have not answered the fundamental question, Chancellor Zixthul said finally. Why should we trust you? How do we know that humans will continue to choose restraint? Lisa looked directly at the Velkari representative. Because we have been choosing restraint for over 200 years. Every day, we make the decision not to use our power for conquest. Every day, we choose cooperation over domination. We could have conquered the Hydros when we first met them. We chose partnership instead. We could have dominated the Centauri mining consortium when they defaulted on their debts. We chose to restructure their economy instead. We could have taken the Outer Rim colonies by force when they declared independence. We chose to negotiate trade agreements instead. Every species in this chamber has something that humans could take by force if we chose to. Resources, territory, technology, strategic positions. We have the power to take whatever we want, but we choose not to. We choose to ask instead of demand. We choose to trade instead of steal. We choose to negotiate instead of conquer. Captain. Parker displayed one final set of data. Historical analysis of human decision-making over the past 2 centuries. In 437 situations where humans had the option to use superior force to achieve their goals, they chose diplomatic solutions 431 times. In the 6 cases where humans did use military force, it was in defense of allies or in response to direct attacks on human civilians. Our track record speaks for itself, Admiral Morrison said. We use force only when all other options have been exhausted, and only to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This is what you do not understand about human nature, Lisa said, addressing the entire chamber. We do not see power as a tool for domination. We see it as a responsibility for protection. We do not conquer because we are strong. We become strong so that we do not need to conquer. The emergency session had been called to address concerns about human expansion. But as the representatives of 46 species sat in stunned silence, they realized they were learning something. Far more important, they were learning that in a galaxy full of predators, the most dangerous creature was the one that chose when not to hunt. The implications would take time to fully understand. But one thing was already clear: the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The Great Chamber remained silent for a long time after the humans had revealed their true capabilities. Representatives from dozens of species stared at the holographic displays showing human military strength and economic influence. The numbers were still glowing in the air, impossible to ignore or deny. Chancellor Zexthul was the first to speak. His crystalline form had dimmed considerably, and his 4 arms moved in slow, uncertain patterns. You possess the power to dominate this entire galaxy, he said quietly. Yet you choose to sit in this chamber and negotiate with species you could easily conquer. This is what we do not understand, he continued. This is what makes your species so unpredictable and therefore dangerous. You act against your own obvious interests. Lisa Carter walked slowly back to the center of the speaking platform. Every step she took seemed to echo louder than it should in the vast space. Chancellor Zexthul, you assumed that domination would be in our interests. But you are making a fundamental error about human nature. She gestured to Admiral Morrison, who stood up and moved to join her at the central platform. Admiral Morrison has spent 40 years in human military service. He has commanded fleets, planned battles, and faced enemies who threatened human civilians. Admiral, please tell the Council about human military doctrine. Morrison's scarred hands clasped behind his back as he addressed the assembled aliens. Human military doctrine is based on 3 principles, he said in his deep, gravelly voice. First, use the minimum force necessary to achieve your objective. Second, protect those who cannot protect themselves. Third, always leave your enemy a way to surrender with dignity. These principles guide every military action humans take, he continued. We do not fight to conquer, we fight to protect. We do not seek to destroy our enemies. We seek to make them no longer wish to be our enemies. General Throck of the Draconian Empire made a sound that the translators interpreted as disbelief. These are not military principles. These are the thoughts of prey animals who fear conflict. Are they? Morrison asked calmly. General Throck, how many wars has the Draconian Empire fought in the past century? 17 major campaigns, Throck replied proudly. We have conquered 12 systems and defended our territory against 5 invasion attempts. And how many wars have humans fought in the same period? Throck consulted his datapad. According to our records, 3 conflicts involving human forces. Correct, Morrison said. 3 defensive actions, each lasting less than 6 months, each ending with negotiated settlements that left our former enemies as trading partners. We achieved our objectives with minimal casualties and maximum long-term stability. You call this strength? Throck demanded. I call it effectiveness, Morrison replied. We have expanded into more territory, established more colonies, and created more alliances than the Draconian Empire, all while fighting fewer than 20% as many wars. Director Kate Sullivan activated her datapad and transmitted new information to the main display. Comparative analysis of human versus Draconian expansion over the past century, she announced. The holographic chart that appeared made General Throke's massive frame slump in his chair. Despite fighting 17 wars, the Draconian Empire had expanded by only 43 systems. Humans, fighting only 3 defensive actions, had established colonies in over 200 systems. How is this possible? Whispered the representative from the Tau Ceti Federation. Because we learned the most important lesson in galactic politics, Lisa said. It is easier to make friends than to defeat enemies. It is more profitable to trade than to conquer. It is more effective to negotiate than to fight. Captain Ben. Parker stepped forward with another data display. Resource analysis. Draconian Empire military expenditure as percentage of total economy, 37%. Human military expenditure as percentage of total economy, 8%. The Draconians spend nearly 40% of their entire economic output on military forces, Parker continued. Humans spend less than 10% and achieve better results. This is impossible, General Throck protested. Military strength requires military investment. You cannot maintain superior forces with inferior spending. You can if you rarely need to use them, Admiral Morrison replied. Human military doctrine focuses on deterrence rather than aggression. We maintain enough strength to defend ourselves and our allies, but we invest most of our resources in building relationships that make military action unnecessary. Consul Myrthilla of the Hydros delegation made rippling motions with her fins. The humans are saying that they achieve military objectives through non-military means? Exactly, Lisa confirmed. When we first encountered the Sigma Draconis pirates, they were raiding shipping lanes throughout the sector. The traditional response would have been to hunt them down and destroy them. Instead, we offered them legitimate employment in our merchant marine. We gave them better ships, regular pay, and the respect that comes with honest work. Within 2 years, the former pirates had become our most effective patrol fleet in that sector. They now protect the same shipping lanes they once raided, and they do it more effectively than any military force could have. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as representatives tried to process this information. The concept of turning enemies into allies was not entirely foreign, but the systematic way humans seemed to approach it was unprecedented. You are describing a complete reversal of normal power dynamics, observed the ethereal collective representative. Instead of using strength to impose your will, you use strength to create conditions where others voluntarily align with your interests. Now you are beginning to understand, Director Sullivan said with satisfaction. Human power is not based on forcing others to obey us. It is based on making others want to work with us. But this requires something that no other species has ever achieved on a galactic scale, she continued. It requires trust. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water, creating ripples of unease throughout the assembled representatives. Trust, repeated Chancellor Zexthal, as if the concept were foreign to him. You base your entire civilization on trust? We base our entire civilization on earning trust, Lisa corrected. Every day, with every decision, we must prove that we deserve the confidence others place in us. This is why we reveal our true capabilities today, Admiral Morrison added. Not to threaten you, but to demonstrate our commitment to transparency. We could have hidden our strength forever. Instead, we choose to show you exactly what we are capable of, so you can make informed decisions about working with us. Captain. Parker activated one final display. Projected outcomes of current galactic political systems, he announced. Analysis based on historical patterns of expansion, conquest, and resource depletion. The hologram showed a grim future. Wars becoming more frequent as resources became scarce. Species extinction rates increasing as weaker civilizations were absorbed or destroyed. Economic collapse as military spending consumed ever larger portions of galactic productivity. This is where the current system leads, Parker said quietly. Endless conflict, diminishing returns, and eventual collapse of galactic civilization. Or, Lisa said, gesturing to a second projection, we can choose a different path. The alternative future showed stable expansion, sustainable resource use, and cooperative development. Species working together to solve problems instead of fighting over limited resources. Technology shared instead of hoarded. Strength used to protect rather than conquer. This is what human methods can achieve, Lisa said. Not just for humans, but for everyone. The choice is yours, Admiral Morrison added. We offer partnership, not conquest. We offer cooperation, not domination. We offer a future where everyone can prosper. But understand this, Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the vast chamber. We will continue on this path whether you join us or not. We will continue to choose cooperation over conquest, trade over tribute, negotiation over warfare. We will continue to prove that there is a better way to organize galactic civilization. The only question is whether you want to be part of building that future, or whether you prefer to cling to the old ways until they finally destroy everything you claim to protect. The representatives of 46 species sat in stunned silence, contemplating a choice they had never imagined they would face. In the end, the most dangerous thing about humans was not their weapons or their numbers or their technology. It was hope. The silence in the great chamber stretched on for what felt like hours. Representatives from 46 different species sat motionless in their seats, staring at the holographic projections that showed two possible futures for galactic civilization. One path led to endless war and eventual collapse. The other led to cooperation and shared prosperity. Chancellor Zextu was the first to move. The crystalline being stood slowly, his forearms trembling slightly as he processed everything he had learned. You have presented us with information that changes everything we thought we knew about galactic politics, he said, his translated voice carrying uncertainty for the first time. The Valkyrie Empire called this emergency session to address the threat of human expansion, he continued. But you have shown us that humans are not expanding through conquest. You are expanding through cooperation. You are not taking resources from others. You are helping others use their resources more effectively. He paused, looking around the chamber at the other representatives. You have also shown us that you possess the power to conquer us all, but you choose not to use it. This is behavior that the Valkyrie Empire does not understand. Lisa Carter remained standing at the central platform. What specifically do you not understand, Chancellor? Why do you make this choice? Zexthal asked. Why do you choose the difficult path of cooperation when the simple path of conquest is available to you? Why do you share power when you could hoard it? Why do you build others up when you could keep them weak? Director Kate Sullivan stood up from the human delegation table. Because we learned something about power that other species have not discovered, she said, walking to join Lisa at the center of the chamber. Power that is taken by force must be maintained by force, Sullivan explained. Conquest requires constant vigilance. Oppression requires endless resources. Fear-based control eventually creates rebellion. But power that is given freely becomes Stronger over time. Cooperation creates loyalty. Mutual benefit creates lasting alliances. Trust creates stability that force can never achieve. Admiral Morrison joined them at the central platform. In human history, every empire built on conquest eventually fell. Every ruler who relied on fear was eventually overthrown. Every system based on oppression was eventually destroyed by those it oppressed. But partnerships based on mutual respect and shared benefit can last for centuries, he continued. Trade relationships built on fairness create prosperity for all involved. Alliances formed through cooperation become stronger when tested by external threats. Captain Ben Parker activated a new display showing human alliance networks. The hologram revealed a complex web of relationships spanning hundreds of star systems and dozens of species. Trade routes, mutual defense agreements, technology sharing, pacts, and cultural exchange programs created a network that grew stronger with each new connection. This is the foundation of human power, Parker explained. Not military force, but voluntary cooperation. Not conquered subjects, but willing partners. Not extracted tribute, but mutually beneficial trade. Every species that joins this network becomes stronger, Lisa added. Every partnership creates new opportunities for growth. Every alliance opens new possibilities for expansion and development. Consul Mirthala of the Hydros delegation activated her speaking system. The humans offer us a choice between two different models of galactic civilization, she said, her translated voice carrying thoughtful consideration. The traditional model based on strength and dominance, or a new model based on cooperation and shared growth. The evidence suggests that the human model produces better results for everyone involved, she continued. Higher prosperity, lower military costs, greater stability, more innovation, faster expansion. Then why do we fear it? Asked the representative from the Silicon-based Miners Federation. The question hung in the air like a challenge. Several species representatives looked uncomfortable, as if the answer was obvious but embarrassing to admit. General Throck of the Draconian Empire finally provided the answer. Because it requires us to change, he said, his massive frame slumping. In defeat, the human model works, but it requires us to abandon everything we think we know about how the galaxy operates. It requires us to trust instead of dominate. It requires us to cooperate instead of compete. It requires us to share instead of hoard. It requires us to think in terms of mutual benefit instead of zero-sum competition. For species like the Draconians, who have built our entire culture around strength and conquest, this represents a fundamental threat to our identity, he continued. If cooperation is more effective than conquest, then what does that say about everything we have believed for thousands of years? Lisa nodded with understanding. Change is always difficult, she said gently, especially when it requires admitting that there might be a better way than the one you have always used. But consider the alternative, Admiral Morrison added. The current system is not sustainable. Military spending is consuming larger and larger portions of galactic economic output. Wars are becoming more frequent and more destructive. Resources are being depleted faster than they can be replaced. If we continue on the current path, galactic civilization will eventually collapse under the weight of its own conflicts, Director Sullivan said. But if we choose the path of cooperation, we can build something that lasts for millennia. The ethereal collective representative spoke for the first time in hours. The humans present compelling evidence that their methods produce superior results, the being of pure energy said in musical tones. But implementation would require unprecedented changes in how most species approach galactic politics. Change is possible, Lisa replied. We have seen it happen. The Hydros changed from an isolated species focused on their underwater worlds to active partners in galactic trade and exploration. The Centauri Mining Consortium changed from a struggling operation on the edge of bankruptcy to a thriving cooperative that supplies raw materials to dozens of systems. The Sigma Draconis pirates changed from raiders who threatened interstellar commerce to protectors who defend the shipping lanes they once attacked. Captain Parker added, "Each of these changes required trust," Sullivan said. "Trust that humans would keep their promises. Trust that cooperation would produce better results than competition. Trust that partnership would be more beneficial than independence. And in every case, that trust was rewarded," Lisa concluded. Chancellor Zexthul stood silent for several minutes, his crystalline form flickering with complex light patterns that indicated deep thought. Finally, he spoke. "The Velkari Empire withdraws its accusations against humanity," he announced formally. "Furthermore," he continued, "the Velkari Empire requests to begin discussions regarding potential partnership agreements with human colonies in the disputed sectors." A ripple of surprise went through the chamber. The Velkari had been among the most vocal critics of human expansion. Their sudden reversal was unexpected. "The evidence is clear," Zexthul explained. "Human methods produce better results than Velkari methods. Logic dictates that we should adopt more effective approaches." One by one, other species representatives began standing and making similar announcements. The Chitauri requested technology-sharing agreements. The Tau Ceti Federation asked about trade partnerships. Even General Throck grudgingly admitted that the Draconian Empire might benefit from studying human diplomatic techniques. As the emergency session drew to a close, Lisa Carter looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species who had come here to condemn humanity and were now asking to join them. "The choice to cooperate must be made freely," she said to the assembled delegates. "We will not pressure anyone to change their methods. We will simply continue to demonstrate that there is a better way. Our doors remain open to any species that wishes to explore partnership," Admiral Morrison added. "We offer our friendship to all who are willing to offer theirs in return." The emergency session ended not with condemnation of human expansion, but with requests for human partnership. The galaxy had learned something important that day. In a universe full of predators, the most powerful species was the one that chose to help others become stronger instead of keeping them weak. The most feared beings in the council chambers were those who offered hope instead of conquest. And sometimes, the greatest weapon was simply choosing not to use the weapons you possessed.